G'day everyone, I'm AzureBlaze, and welcome to my next video in the Mario/Kirby Marathon that I've been doing for a little while. This time I will be covering Super Mario Land, which released in 1989 on the original Game Boy as a launch title. First thing I want to discuss is the look of the game, as it is a really early Game Boy game, being a launch title, and compared to something like Kirby's Dream Land, which released 2 to 3 years later, it does not hold up quite as well in my opinion. Like with all original Game Boy games, the game is entirely in black and white, or if you look at it on a Game Boy itself, it's more green, or if you're playing it on the Switch, like I am, you can change it between the green, the black and white, or even a coloured version, which I'm assuming came out in the Game Boy Color. And all the sprites are really small and squashed, which does admittedly help with things like screen crunch. However, I found it created a really limited style overall, and it had the side effect of smaller hitboxes, which makes it a little finicky when trying to jump on enemies or collect items. To go with that, the controls do not hold up that well, and they don't really make things easier. While everything the player needs is there, like walking, jumping, and sprinting, nothing feels quite right. All the physics feel off, especially gravity. When the player jumps and falls, the speed seems somewhat correct. It's a little off, however, it seems somewhat correct to how it should probably be. However, when walking off the side of something, Mario falls like a rock. he almost like snaps down to the ground from the side of whatever he was on. Which is, oh, actually snaps down to the ground, or snaps down off the stage if you're in the wrong spot. It is really jarring and causes some difficulties when like combined with the smaller sprites, especially when like you're like edging to the side of the block to make a long jump or something like that, and you accidentally don't jump in time or something like that, and then he goes. it's a whole thing. However, like even though the controls have not aged the best, the game is quite creative for a game of its age and for the console that it was on, especially being a launch title, as it presents a different premise for a Mario game, a new item, and new locations, which is interesting to see them doing things like that back then, which they didn't do for a long time during like the 2000s through the 2010s and all that sort of thing. Yeah, the game is set in Sarasaland instead of the Mushroom Kingdom, which is the home of Daisy, which is really neat. I like that this is where Daisy first came in. Like, I've known that for a while, however, I do like that. And it's got some very unique levels. My favorite probably being the Egyptian levels, as seeing things like the Sphinx in the background is simply really funny. I don't know why I found that really funny. And it seems a little bit out of place as well, because it's like the Sphinx from real life sort of in the background. I know the Sphinx has been used again in like Odyssey and stuff as well. However, like, yeah, it seemed a little bit out of place simply to be back like in the background of a 2D game that doesn't have much detail in its sprites because of how small they have to be. There's even levels where Mario flies in a plane and fires oncoming enemies, which is very unique, and I'm not 100% if that's something that's been done in like a 2D or like a 2D Mario game again. I might be wrong about that. I might find stuff later that it might be in. However, yeah, I don't know. As far as I can think, that hasn't really been done. The final level plays like this as well, and the player has to defeat the final boss like this, which is a really interesting way to finish the game. The final boss, Tatonga, is another really unique thing for this game, and another thing that I'm not 100% to whether Mario is really done again. He's an alien who abducts Daisy. Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting. I do kind of like it though. You like battle him while he's in his UFO type thing with your plane. It's kind of funny. And yeah, as I said, it was an interesting way to finish the game. And with that though, Mario saves Daisy instead of Peach, and the game is over. Yeah, there wasn't much really to say about it because being a Game Boy launch title, this game isn't very long. With only 4 worlds with 3 levels each, which is like, what, 12 levels overall or something like that? Therefore, it was a fairly quick game to play through, and I don't know, I do like a lot of quicker games as well as like longer games. I like having the mixture. It's been really fun to sort of go back and forth with this marathon, almost. It's been interesting to see. Something I do quickly want to touch on before ending though is the new power-up, the Super Ball. It's interesting. I like it. I think it has shown up again in Mario Maker. I believe Mario Maker 2, possibly. One of the two. I should have done more research before this video. However, yeah, it's really fun. I don't know, I like how it like bounces around and all that sort of thing, and I think it's something that would have been very interesting to see in Mario Bros. Wonder as well, actually. I don't know, maybe we'll see it again in another mainline game at one point. I don't know, who knows. Another thing is the music. As I've said before, I'm not the biggest music guy. Like, I either like or don't like music. I think the music in this game is great from what I heard of it. Generally, I don't play these games while listening to the music that much. I'm generally watching something else or doing something as well in the background. However, yeah, the music from what I heard was really good. I really enjoyed it. However, overall, this game, while not having aged the best, was really fun, and it was interesting to see how the developers tried putting a Mario game on the Game Boy, especially as early on as it was, and I think they did succeed, ultimately. Like, I can easily recommend this game to anyone that's curious, like, especially since it's such a short game to go through, and it does exude a fair amount of creativity and charm, which, I don't know, I really like. I think that's really neat. However, yeah, I think it's a pretty good game. Despite its flaws from age. I think it would be interesting to see it like remade, not necessarily remake the game itself and put out the game again, like remake the game and put it in as like a side game in another Mario game in the future or something like that. I mean, someone's probably remade it in Mario Maker. I'm sure they probably have. I don't know, it's really fun. I don't know how they do the planes though. Anyway, yeah, I think it'd be a fun little like side game in another Mario game to be remade like that or something like that. However, for this video, I believe that is everything. The next video in the series will be on Kirby Superstar, which is a much bigger game than this. However, yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I shall be back in the next one. Cheers, everyone.